and good afternoon. It's Donna Balzer. I am here with my cup of tea to join you for Facebook Live today. So I hope you have some gardening questions. I hope you're ready to go. I hope you're ready to log on. And if you're not, I'll just talk to myself. I'm used to that. So welcome back. I'm Donna, and I'm the author of the Gardener's Gratitude Journal. And that's where I write down every day something that's happening. And the cool thing about this journal is that there's 3 years to write in. So we've already gone through last year, this year. Oh, wait a minute. I wrote 2018 twice there. Sometimes I don't know what year we're in. And then a third year. So the idea behind that is that when you have something growing that you absolutely love, you can mark it down 3 years in a row so that you can keep track. Today I want to talk about a couple of things. One of them is Echeveria, and one of them is microgreens, because I've had some extra questions about microgreens. So I just want to make sure everyone's understanding where we're going with that. So if you're a gardener, if you have a question, just go down to the bottom of the page on the, well, most people have it on the right-hand side at the bottom, and go down there and just type in your question. I'd be happy to answer it. If you don't get your question in within this time period, it's usually about half an hour, but it could be shorter. If you don't get your question in, just make sure to leave it anyways on the Facebook feed, because I'll go back in up to half an hour later and still keep answering those questions. So welcome. Again, I'm Donna Balzer. I'm here to help you grow your garden better. I like to say I help gardeners grow and beginners blossom. So come on in. Let's get started. Let's start with microgreens. We talked about that a few weeks ago, and I've been having a lot of fun growing them. So this is what they look like when they're ready to eat. Now, microgreens can be harvested more than once. Many of the directions, many of the things tell you that you can only harvest them once. But as long as you are, here we go, is this the one? Yes. As long as you are pinching them back to a stem, you can't see the stem on that one, so let's look at this one. As long as you're pinching them back to where you see a stem, those will regrow. So here's one right here. Whoops, you can't see it. Okay, you can see that little leaf right here. As long as I pinch it back right above that little leaf, this is hard to do. There we go. Pinched it back, got it just above that little leaf. So what will happen is it'll continue to grow from that little leaf. And so I cut these back 3 or 4 times. So the truth is that these taste exactly like garden peas. If you've been growing microgreens and they don't taste exactly like garden peas, if they're not sweet and delicious, then you're doing something wrong. The second thing is, and that something is probably growing the wrong variety. The second thing is, why waste your time in the garden? I wouldn't want to waste my time. So what I do, I'm going to have some tea now. What I do is I grow a variety of microgreens that I also want to use for my garden later in the spring. And there's Nancy. Hey, Nancy, hi. Now, Nancy says it's still cold in Medicine Hat, minus 21. I got my first nut from my avocado. How do I plant it? So let's finish off the microgreen conversation, Nancy. What I was going to say is that if you're growing a type of pea that you're happy with outside, and I'm really happy with the Oregon giant peas, I grow those outside. When I realized how much I liked that pea in particular, because they produce by middle of June, they're really lovely, I started all my microgreens using that pea. And that way, when they're finished, I can transplant it into my greenhouse, which the soil warms up quite a bit warmer and quite a bit earlier in the greenhouse. So I'll put my microgreens, when I'm finished cutting them 3 or 4 times, they get kind of woody, they're not as nice. So I then plant them right out into my greenhouse. And usually about a month later, so last year was April 17th, I was harvesting peas in my greenhouse. So that's a lot of fun. Whereas if you start your microgreens from a variety like any just generic, it's listed as microgreen peas, probably going to be gray sugar or something like that. One of the field peas, they just don't taste good out in the garden. The peas themselves aren't good. So it's kind of a waste. When you finish growing microgreens, you just have to throw them away. Oh, we've also got Sean here and Maxine. Thank you for joining us. We are going to answer questions, and we'll start with Nancy, because she had a question here about, from Medicine Hat, she got a nut from an avocado. And I have to tell you, Nancy, I've tried the little thing. If you look it up on the internet, you'll see there's a little thing where you put toothpicks in the avocado avocado and suspend it above water. Has not worked for me. The only thing that worked for me is throwing my avocado nuts into my compost pile, whether it's a worm bin, which is inside your house, or an outdoor compost bin. Nancy, if you do that, you're going to find, especially the worm bin, by the time everything else has been eaten, that avocado is going to be ready to grow. So 3 or 4 avocados that I've started, I pulled them all out of my worm bin or my compost outside, and they were already sprouting. So they need a moist and really warm environment. And that's why I'm afraid just sticking toothpicks and suspending it over glass isn't going to be warm enough, especially where you've got the really dry air in Medicine Hat. So that's what I would say about your avocado. They're not as easy as they might seem. And I think that if I was you, I would just throw it in my compost. And I love worm bins. I think that's a tremendous thing. Oh, I have to thank everyone for commenting on my hairstyle last week. I took a really old picture because I wanted to tell people I was going to the farmer's market. And I took a really old picture out of my archives and just put it up saying, hey, this weekend, farmer's market. And about 25 people said, well, maybe not that many. Lots of people said, really love your new haircut. Did not get a cut. I was just posting that picture to say I'm going to the farmer's market, which was lots of fun, actually. I really liked it. So Sean said, nice about the peas. I think, where did you get your pea seeds? I couldn't see the label. Well, I got these from Mums. You can't see the label because I just buy them in a big 15, what was it, 15 gallons? No, 15 kilogram bag. And then I just repackaged them because when I started to realize how great it was to grow Oregon Spring and Oregon Giant, it's just a brand, and you can buy it from Mums, which is a producer in northern Saskatchewan, or you can buy it from almost any garden catalog sells Oregon Giant. They're a great kind of tea because they're open pollinated, so you can save your own seeds in the fall. So that's why I'm encouraging people to grow Oregon Giant. They're also a very big pea. They get to be about 8 inches long. You can eat them flat like a Chinese potted pea, or you can let them puff out, and then you can eat them as a sugar snap pea. So I really love the Oregon Giant, and they are available from so many different catalogs. I've seen them really almost anywhere. What I'm doing here is just putting a full cup in each bag so that people have enough that they can start a whole flat all at once if they want to, or over stages of microgreens. So I hope that helps. Yay, and Julia's here. Can you tell me what crops you're currently growing in your greenhouse and when you seeded them? Currently in my greenhouse, Julia, I am growing bok choy, and I seeded that last September. And that seems early, but you know what? When you seed things early, like bok choy in September, and I think it was the first September 4th or 5th, what happens over winter, the greenhouse keeps the soil from freezing. They don't really grow, but there's a period sort of around November, December where they stop growing, but they just sit. It's almost like they're in the fridge. If you're in a really cold climate, you'll probably want to put the fabric row, the fleece on top of it, because that'll give you another 12 degrees of insulation. So the greenhouse gives you 7 or 8 degrees if it's twin wall. Double wall would give you more, triple wall even more. But you could also put the fabric over top. So I have, sorry, long story, bok choy. I still have carrots in my greenhouse. I still have beets. I just have a few more left to pull. Again, I just put them in last summer. So that's my winter crop. I just planted, and I left my spinach in as well. But I've just planted, just this weekend, I put in new spinach. And I did this in trays because what I want to do in my greenhouse is I have a heat mat, and I put that on my frame. I have just a table in my greenhouse. I put the large oversized heat mat, and I've started all these seeds on top of the heat mat. I have started cauliflowers, 4 kinds of cauliflowers. I've started broccoli. I started arugula, spinach. So even though I have spinach in the garden, I'm starting more. This is the real good time of year to get started with your spinach. So that is a really long answer. Anyway, I've got lots of things going. The thing that people don't realize is that you could be out pruning your raspberries. So say your neighbor says to you, I have the world's best raspberries. And that is what my neighbor said to me. So I went over to her yard and I got all her trimmings because she had been out cutting back her raspberries, because that's something you can do in the winter. She was cutting back her raspberries, thinning them out, and I got cuttings from her, and those are beautiful. They have lovely, just actually down, I'll put a picture up as soon as we're finished here. They look beautiful. So again, I started them on the heat mat in the greenhouse, and then I covered it with fleece because I didn't want it to freeze. It's still going to get cold at night even here on the coast. So Julie, I hope that helps. Someone said peat moss. Now, you can start your avocado in peat moss, and it would have to stay moist continuously. As I said, I like to do mine in the compost because the compost heats up, so it'll germinate even faster. So peat moss is something you'd have to babysit a lot. If you're looking to do a lot of babysitting, you can start your avocado in peat moss. Maxine said, what's a good potato variety for growing in a container? Oh, it just depends what you like. As you know, you've probably heard, Help Husband does not like blue potatoes. We used to grow blue Russians. We do not grow them anymore. I have started containers, Warba potatoes. Those are the really early ones that will have, I harvested them last year. I harvested them in, I think it was June. So the early potatoes will be ready earlier. So if you start them now in containers, so I'm not actually starting my potatoes now, except for the ones out in my greenhouse. The ones in my house are just all lined up on my windowsill, and I'm just letting them sprout and letting them chit. So Warba's the earliest, but they're really hard to get this year. So I would go see what you can find. But the French fingerlings are really good in containers, and so are the Ziegland, Sieglinde. These are all really nice potatoes in containers. So we can talk more if you want, but those are some of the ones I've started with. Most of the fingerling potatoes will also go because you're not trying to get them really big, and they'll do pretty good in a container. Louise said, hello, Donna, and happy Monday. Happy to hear Louise, too. I'm a complete beginner, and I found some old seeds that I've never used. Are they salvageable? And if so, is it best to start? Do I soak them first? She has lettuce and snap peas and even more. Wow, she's made a whole list. Edamame, sweet corn. Okay, well, Louise, we covered this a couple of weeks ago, but I'll just go over it quickly again. Get yourself a piece of paper towel, count out 10 seeds of each kind, unless it's a rare seed that maybe you just don't have enough of. But all those, the snap peas, the lettuce, you probably have at least 10 seeds in each package. Moisten your paper towel, count out 10 seeds, roll up your paper towel, put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in a warm place. I put mine on top of my grow lights. I know it's consistently warm on top. Some people have old school fridges. Well, I have one of those too, and they warm up on top, so put it up there. The reason is you're trying to see what your germination rate is, because depending where it's been stored, if they've been stored, for instance, just on a heated floor somewhere, they're probably not going to be as good. If they've been stored in a coffee can in your fridge, they'll probably last for 5-6 years. Onions and leeks would last about 2 years, but most of the things that you're saying, like the shelling peas and the snap peas and the lettuce, are good for a long time. The trouble with corn, you might find out doing this germination test, which is 10 seeds, paper towel, moistened, wrapped up, put into the Ziploc bag. That you'll be checking starting day 2 every day. And the number that actually start growing are the number that's your percentage germination. So you've counted 10 seeds. If you have, like I did when I tried mine, I had only 6 of my lettuce seeds germinate because it was 7-year-old seed. They were really old. Only 6 came up. So that says to me I have 60% germination. So if it says space them 1 every inch, I'm actually going to have to space them every half inch. So you just have to plant more when your germination is off. So Louise, try even 1 or 2 varieties of these things and see if you can get them to germinate. If they germinate, count the number that germinate, and that's your percentage germination. But then check the package, and there's always a number of weeks to start it before you're actually going to be planting. So for you, if you find out, for instance, nasturtium is started 4 to 6 weeks before planting, I don't know where you are. Maybe you're in Calgary. I don't know. Let me know if you're in Calgary. But if you are, 4 to 6 weeks before planting for nasturtium would be, you're going to plant them late 3rd week of May. So you might start the middle of April. So just go through and write on your packages when it says 8 to 10 weeks that you should start them early. For instance, snapdragons, you can start 8 to 10 weeks before the last frost. You'd be starting them in March. So you just have to count backwards for your own area. So I hope that helps. If it doesn't, text me here with another follow-up question. Sean says you can do the paper towel test. Yes, we talked about that. Oh no, I just went through that long explanation. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So that is tremendous. And I just repeated it for anyone that forgot it. Well, you see, I can't really read fast enough ahead and answer the questions and still be reading, but there you go. Sean is on it today and she's answering questions for me. So you guys can do that. I don't know if you realize you can answer each other's questions during the show and just go to the bottom of your page, write your comment, and that's all good. So the bottom line was, Louise, you can salvage most of those seeds. The only things I find really particular are things like the corn will change, and when you're growing it, it'll change. Even if it germinates, doesn't mean it'll be the same, because most of the corns are hybrids, and they'll change. I don't know what happens. I gave some to my mom. We used to get free seeds when I worked for the university, on the university farm in Edmonton, and we had free seeds because there was just too many samples coming in, and we'd seed 100 and then there'd be 15 left over, or 20, or some number like this, and I would bring them home and give them to her, and she wanted to be very special, and she'd only start 2 seeds a year, and she found by the 3rd year the corn she was growing was nothing like the corn that I had given her originally. So I think what happens is it just degrades over time. Anyway, thank you to everyone. Oh, Louise is in Duncan. So in Duncan, Louise, your start dates will be quite a bit earlier than almost anywhere else. So Duncan is probably going to have your last frost mid-April. So some of the things like lettuce and even shelling peas, you can be starting earlier in April. Shelling peas, for instance, I would start as microgreens, the same way I was showing you earlier. If you missed that, these are my microgreens. So if you've got lots of peas left over, you can just soak them overnight and plant them as microgreens in any kind of a pot or tray, and then harvest them 2 or 3 times. You just let them come up and you pick them off. And then because you're in Duncan, you're going to be planting earlier. I would probably start the first week of April in Duncan. Could be even the last week of March. Start planting them outside from your microgreens. And I just take big handfuls and plant them in the ground. And what I find there is that they'll probably grow. And if they don't, worst case scenario, just put some more in. So if you're starting microgreens on a regular basis from your leftover seeds, that'll work good. And Maxine said, thank you. Well, thank you, Maxine. It's really fun for me when people ask questions and jump in. I find that's just a lot of fun. Of course, I've already forgotten what Maxine's question is. Oh, the good potato variety. Right. I have so many different kinds of potatoes ordered. Let me know what kind of potatoes you've ordered. There's, like I say, the early season, the mid-season, and the late season. And the early season ones are probably the easiest in the containers, but also tricky to get. And when you buy them at the garden centers, they sell you those huge bags of like 10 pounds of potatoes, and most people don't have enough space for that. So if you're starting in containers, look for the early potatoes. Doesn't really matter where you're shopping, because what I found with the Warbas, for instance, is that they'll produce a certain number of potatoes and then they stop rooting, they stop making new potatoes, and that's why they're early, because you can pick them as soon as they've made their potatoes. You don't have to wait for them to get full size. And she's already finished her question, said thank you and gone away. But I just wanted to let you know that's just a little more information that you can Google or find online. So bring your phone with you when you're shopping for potatoes in the stores. They'll be getting them in soon. I know the suppliers will be shipping them really, really soon. Okay, so any other questions? I had something else that I brought here today, which is my Echeveria. I'll just move this aside and move my Echeveria to the front. This is my massive Echeveria that's been in my greenhouse. And as you can see, they spread. Each little clump. Some people think that these are hens and chicks, but these are not. I'm going to have to put that down because it's so heavy. These are very waxy. They're a lot like hens and chicks, but they're very waxy leaved, and they're very often in different colors. There's a lot of kinds available. And these ones I've grown from just a single leaf. So I'm going to put it back here so that you can, whoops, a little bit this way so you can see it. You don't want it to fall on the ground. Here's a whole little plant that's just coming off the main plant. But many of them, and here's another little one that you see that's coming off. Many of them just get little babies on the side. Here, if I turn it around, you can see, whoop, not quite around enough. This little one has a little baby on the side. So you could take off the whole baby, but you don't even have to do that. What you have to do is pull off a single leaf. Did you see how easy that was? I just reached in and I just pulled off a single leaf. If you take this leaf and put it on your counter, probably in a tray or in a plate so that somebody doesn't sweep it into the compost, within a month or 2 months at most, it'll just be sitting there. It'll just be hanging out. It'll start to grow little roots off of it. And then from the little roots, it'll start to grow, and they'll be pink, and they're kind of funny looking. And then they start to grow a little mini plant off of it. So if you do nothing at all but take this single leaf and put it on a plate or on a not on a windowsill. You don't want a hot spot. You want just somewhere average, not too much light, but a little bit of light. This will actually root. But what some people prefer is to put it on a bit of soil. So put soil in a flat tray, put your leaf on top of that, and let it root from there. That single leaf will produce a whole cluster, a whole single cluster, like one rosette, in a year. It takes about a year. So this one leaf will produce a whole cluster in a year. So you can just leave them in your house, or you can put them in your greenhouse later. But what I've done is I've actually planted them on just a little bit of Pro Mix, and then put that tray on my heat. Again, I have a heat mat, which I have under grow lights, because I'm going to see how fast I can push these. Before now, I've just put them on a plate, left them alone, and within a year, I have a rosette. This year, I've put them on peat moss under cover. Now, the risk is it might be too moist and it might rot. So that is something I'm trying. So for anyone that has seen the echeverias and has fallen in love with them, they're about $8 for a mature plant. Sometimes they're like 12 or 15, depending on the variety. So if you want to try growing your own, you just need a single leaf. And if you have a friend with the plant, you can easily see, I didn't even have a knife. I just pull it off the main plant and that will grow into a whole plant. So I wanted to get to echeverias today. Oh, Sean has horrible potato scab. Well, then, Sean, you need to grow in grow bags. And that's something I've been talking about for weeks, and I haven't finished yet. I'm putting together a course in growing in grow bags. You probably are already an experienced enough gardener that you would know you just have to plant them in the grow bag. The early varieties will be planted into straight compost that you've produced, or will be planted into clean soil that you know you've never had potatoes growing in them, because potatoes are very, very picky. They actually need to have tons of nutrients. When they're the least bit stressed, they get scabby. There are some scab resistant types like the German butterball, but for you, I would start first growing in a grow bag so that you can have an isolated situation. And what I do is every spring when I turn up my compost, I use that fresh compost for my potatoes. And I've just planted potatoes in my greenhouse. I think I talked about that a few weeks, but in case anyone's just noticed us, oh, sorry. Somebody earlier asked what else I had in my greenhouse, and that was Julia. No, somebody else asked, and I forgot. But I did put roof gutter cables. I got these at Canadian Tire. I put those down on top of the soil in my one bed in my greenhouse, and I put my grow bags on top of that, and I put just this much of compost because I just emptied one compost. Put the potatoes just on top, and they are starting to sprout in that situation. I do put row cover, and that's also called Agribon, on top, because even though it's in the greenhouse, it's still freezing at night. Don't want my potatoes to freeze. So don't worry about the scab. I think you'll be okay, Sean. You just have to start with maybe trying in pots or trying in fabric root pouches. Lana is here. Hi, Lana. I haven't seen you come before. Do you have any experience with planting peanuts? I'm trying them this year in Invermere. I have experience with not being successful with peanuts. Peanuts grow for such a long time. I've seen them in South Carolina, so I know how they grow. They germinate quickly and grow easily. But they then, when they're mature, sometime in August, have to send out a long sprout, and that long sprout goes way over in the soil to the ground. And that sprout goes underground, and when it's underground, it flowers and it produces the next peanut. So here's the problem. Invermere's a pretty warm climate, so you might, if you could choose a really hot spot, you might be really lucky, because you have to let the whole plant mature, and then it has to send out the sprout. That sprout has to go into the ground, and then it flowers. So it takes a long time to harvest a peanut. And so I've bought peanuts to plant, and I've never had a long enough season. So I would have to take up space in my greenhouse, and I'm not willing. It takes way over 120 days. It takes probably like 160 to 180 days to grow a peanut, and that's a really long time. So I would have to do it in my greenhouse if I was growing peanuts. You might be lucky in Invermere, especially if you've got a south spot in Invermere. If you don't have a greenhouse but have a hot spot, sometimes you don't get frost until October, so you might be okay. Start with a cold frame, start with some way of getting those plants growing earlier, maybe start them in the house earlier, and then put them out. So good luck with that, Lana. And I think that was it for questions. And I've talked about my Echeveria. Do we have anything else coming in? Now remember, there is a 20-second delay. So if you're sending in things and you're wondering why isn't Donna answering, it's because there is often a delay. So I think that's it. Has anyone else in the group grown peanuts? I wonder if Sean's grown peanuts. Sean has, I know this from past shows, Sean has a greenhouse, so she may have grown peanuts, but for me, I don't want to take up space in my greenhouse with that. Right now I've got the raspberries, the figs. See, hard to remember. Raspberries and figs I took from cuttings because I did some pruning, and my neighbor promised me that those raspberries were going to be blooming and producing fruit in April up until October, so I was very excited about that. So I have those woody plants as well as my spinach, carrots, and bok choy from last year, and my new cauliflower, broccoli, and spinach, and lettuce and arugula from this year. So looking pretty busy. Lana says, awesome. I wonder how you'll do. Lana, I hope you check back with us. I hope you tell us how you're doing and when you're starting your peanuts. That would be really fun. Sean says she hasn't tried peanuts. So as I said, I tried them, but I tried them when I was in Calgary, and it wasn't warm enough in Calgary. If you haven't gardened in Calgary, it's it can be. I've had snow actually in Calgary. I've had snow every month of the year. I had it in June when we were filming my show Bugs and Blooms. We had snow in July 25th while we were filming. We had snow. I've had snow there in August, so we've had snow every month. So peanuts did not work for me in Calgary, but Lana's going to try them in Invermere. So I'm excited about that. We're almost running out of time. I think if there's no more questions, I'll wrap it up for today. I hope that you'll all come and get a piece of Echeveria from me. I want to mention that this Wednesday, if anybody's close, I'm going to be speaking at the Legion, sounds pretty exotic, in Salt Spring Island. So I'm meeting the gardeners there, the Gardener Club, and we're going to Salt Spring Island, so you can see more of those details. Maybe you just feel like getting away from the cold and you can fly out to Salt Spring. I'm excited about going to Salt Spring, and I'll be doing that this Wednesday night. And next Saturday, I'm going to go back to the farmer's market because people were trying these pea sprouts and they were getting very excited about them. And so I was selling these, and of course my lovely books, and of course some of the peas that are packaged. So if you are in Qualicum Beach and want to come to the farmer's market on Saturday, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, this Wednesday, I'm going to be in Salt Spring Island, and we're going to be talking about growing tips, growing great grub. It should be lots of fun. And next week, I'm going to be in Campbell River. So thinking ahead to next week, I'll be in Campbell River. But meanwhile, I'll be right back here on Facebook Live next Monday. Thank you for joining me. Let's check and see if there's any more questions. Oh, no, there isn't. But, oh, wow. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.